So good day, everyone, and welcome to the Women in Data Science Trinidad and Tobago Data Science Essentials series that we have been hosting for the past few weeks. And in today's session, I will introduce you to one of our mentors and contributors who is going to speak a little bit about data stories. For those of you who don't know me, I am the WiDS Trinidad and Tobago Ambassador, Dr. Leticia Addison, and we are really happy to have you join us today. So let's jump straight into the presentation. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're going to talk today about data stories, how to present data for reporting. And I have with me here Ms. Kirsten Sylvester, and she is an MSc Data Science candidate at the University of the West Indies here in Trinidad and Tobago. So in a little bit, she is going to give you some insights into this particular area. But first off, for those of you who may be new and joining us for the first time, just a few reminders about what WiDS does. We elevate women in data science globally through different means, including conferences, data challenges, podcasts, next generation activities for secondary school students, as well as monthly workshops. Now, in terms of the data challenge, I know some of you who are aware of this year's Datathon, which is an equity in healthcare challenge. And there are two legs of this Datathon, January to March and April to June. Of course, we're nearing the end of the first leg where some of the participants, some of you who are in the audience here would be ready to make your submissions, consistently making submissions to go up the leaderboard. There is still time if any of you want to jump in, so you could check out the worldwide website as listed on the screen, and you will be able to see all of the details involved in this particular Datathon. Or else, if you missed this one, you could always check out the one from April to June, which will be on a similar data set. As for us at WiDS Trinidad and Tobago, we host different workshops, both virtually and in person, and of course, regional events. And I know some of you who have been joining us for the past few weeks, you would have been involved in a few of our different virtual workshops. And we also had some in-person offerings in our university as well for some of you who also participated. And you could check out the schedule for other upcoming events on our page, WiDSTT.org. And just to let you know, after this, so this is today's session is one of the last workshops in the virtual series that we had started from January. But next week, we have a roundup of some of all of the ideas and insights from various data science professionals and speakers across the globe. And that's a little fireside chat. So it'll be less of a technical chat in terms of a workshop, but more of a inviting, very informal panel discussion. And we would love to see you there. We have a few international speakers who some of you would be familiar with, and of course, some of our local speakers. So I would just like to, usually the idea would be to get an idea of how many people in the room have a data science background. And I know most of you might be familiar with this poll, but for the persons who are new, and of course, all of you who were also in the room for the past few weeks, we would advise that you fill this out so we could give our speaker an idea of what your background is. So I'm just going to launch the poll again and take a minute or so. Do let me know if you're seeing it on the screen and fill in your background. So that will give us an idea of what your experience is so far. So I'm seeing people filling out so far, and I'll share the results in a little bit. So far I'm seeing, oh, we have 46%. Okay, it's going up. 43% intermediate, about 43, actually the same intermediate, yes, we're going up, 47% intermediate, 40%. I think we need one more person to fill it out. Yeah, great, excellent. So let me end the poll here and then we can share the results. So are you all seeing the results on screen? Yeah? Okay, so I guess we have about 44% intermediate, 38% beginners, and then we have a couple experts and advanced. Very nice. So that's great. Okay, so let me stop sharing now and let's go straight into our talk today. So I'm very pleased to present our speaker, Ms. Kirsten Sylvester. As I mentioned, she is currently in the MSc Data Science program here at the UWI, which we call for short the University of the West Indies St. Augustine campus in Trinidad and Tobago. And she is going to talk to you about data stories. So Kirsten, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to allow you to jump right into the talk, give them a little bit of your background and your insights.
Thank you. All right. So hi, everyone. My name is Kirsten, and as Dr. Addison mentioned, I'm an MSc candidate at UWI's data science program. I have a background. I was trained as an optometrist, and I worked as an optometrist for several years before pivoting into data science. Most recently, I worked as a physicist assistant in the National Cancer Center of Trinidad and Tobago. So this year's Datathon topic is particularly interesting for me. Right, so let's just get right into it. You may see me looking off to the side, and that's because I have my camera on this side, but my screen's on the other side. Okay. All right, so when presented with data without any explanation, it can be confusing, similar to this graphic. Right, so today's agenda, we're going to cover creating visually engaging presentations based on health-related data, communicating data insights effectively to non-technical stakeholders, and developing clear narratives when presenting data stories. So in the realm of healthcare and public health, effective data presentation plays a pivotal role in shaping the decision-making processes and ultimately in improving outcomes for individuals and communities. So by distilling complex information into comprehensible insights, data presentation can facilitate informed decision-making, resource allocation, and policy development. Healthcare decisions, whether at the individual or organizational level, should be grounded in data-driven insights, and clear and concise data presentation ensures that the stakeholders have access to the information they need to make informed choices regarding patient care, treatment strategies, resource allocation, and public health intervention. Effectively presenting your data can allow for improved health outcomes by allowing the stakeholders to identify trends, patterns, and correlations within health-related data sets so that interventions can be targeted towards high-risk populations and we can implement preventative measures to mitigate health risks. Additionally, your presentation of data serves as a bridge between technical experts and non-technical stakeholders, which could include policymakers, community leaders, and patients. So having an engaging presentation will help the stakeholders grasp the importance of the data and foster collaboration and allow people to buy in to what you're presenting. So there are some challenges to this, and this includes the fact that healthcare data generally involves complex concepts, terminology, and statistical analysis that could be challenging for non-technical audiences to understand. So communicating technical data in a clear and accessible manner requires careful consideration of our language, visuals, and storytelling techniques to ensure that people comprehend the message that we're trying to get across. One thing we want to avoid is information overload. So non-technical stakeholders, such as patients or policymakers, they could be overwhelmed by a large volume of data being presented to them. So it's important to prioritize the key insights and to present information in a structured and digestible format to avoid information overload and ensure that the most critical findings are effectively and clearly communicated. Without proper context, and explanation, technical data runs the risk of being misinterpreted or misunderstood by non-technical stakeholders. So as a presenter, you have to anticipate potential misconceptions and proactively address them through clear explanations, real examples, and interactive discussions. Great. So these are some of the principles of visual engagement. So incorporating visual elements into your presentation is essential for capturing your audience's attention and conveying information effectively. So these are some key ones to consider: use of colors, fonts, and graphics. So the color scheme should be visually appealing and conducive to comprehension. So use contrasting colors to highlight important information and to create a visual hierarchy. However, you don't use too many colors as it can overwhelm the audience and distract from the main message. Your fonts should be clear and legible so they can be easy to read from a distance. You can use emphasis, stylized fonts, increase the size of the font strategically so you can emphasize key points to guide the audience's attention to those points. Relevant graphics, icons, illustrations, and images can complement the content and enhance understanding. So seeing visuals in a presentation can help to break up text-heavy slides and convey complex concepts more effectively, and can also evoke an emotional response from the audience when needed. Graphics should be high quality, appropriately sized, and aligned with the overall theme of the presentation. So you want to also limit your text and focus on impactful visuals. So minimizing the text on the slides helps avoid overwhelming the audience with information. So bullet points or brief phrases to convey key messages. And if you want to try to avoid using long paragraphs or dense blocks of text. So remember, these slides are meant to support your verbal presentation, not replace it. So in other words, not every word that you plan to say should be on your slides, right? Prioritizing use of visuals such as charts, graphs, diagrams, and infographics to illustrate concepts and data trends can help to convey information more effectively than text alone, and also make complex data easier, not only easier to understand, but easier to remember. The use of white space, aka empty space in your slides, helps to improve clarity and readability. So you don't want to overcrowd your slides with too many elements, and allow for sufficient space between your text, graphics, and other visual elements. So white space helps to draw attention to the most important content and prevents visual clutter. Additionally, you want to choose the appropriate chart type for your type of data. So, for example, bar charts are ideal for comparing values across categories or showing changes over time. Line charts can be effective for visualizing trends, patterns, and relationships in data over time. And pie charts are suitable for illustrating parts of a whole or comparing proportions. However, pie charts should be used sparingly and ensure that the categories are clearly labeled to prevent confusion. Scatter plots can be useful for displaying relationships between two variables and identifying correlations or outliers. So scatter plots allow for more nuanced analysis of data relationships than traditional charts. So incorporating these principles into your presentation would help create visually engaging slides that enhance readability, comprehension, and audience engagement. So another point to note is that we should try to maintain consistency in design elements and focus on supporting your narrative with impactful visuals and minimal text. So someone is asking in the chat if there are any books to learn about visual design principles in depth. Dr. Allison, do you have any recommendations?
Specific books, at this point in time, I can't think off the top of my head a specific book, but we have specific websites that we actually outlined. So what you could do, we'll share the folder in the chat with you. on a few of those, and we can always reach out to us and we could give you some more information on those. But they have a lot of information on the web about visual design principles themselves. So that's something that we could share a little more with you, Somia, if I'm saying it correctly, right? So we'll share the link in the chat. So Rihanna, you could share the file in the chat and we have some reference links there. And hope these will be helpful. Okay, continue.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Sophia.
Okay, so we're just gonna get into some sample visuals, right? So just give an idea of what a clear chart can look like. It's not too much information. It's well labeled, not too many colors. Okay. So infographics are also a clear, simple way to get across a great deal of information in one visual. Again, we have a horizontal bar chart here. And what I wanted to point out about this one specifically is that it's because it's horizontal, you can actually see the titles clearly, but if it were vertical and there were more categories, the titles may have been jumbled. So that's something to keep in mind if you have a lot of categories to showcase, that having a chart horizontal can make it easier, more easily readable. All right. So I just want to get some feedback from y'all. So looking at this chart here, can you tell me what is wrong with it? So you can message in the chat. Right, there's no title, definitely. Thanks, Kimberly. Anything else seems off? Your labels are not clear. Great. And there's one more like major thing. One major answer that I'm looking for. The data is obscured. Okay, so yes, definitely. There's no title, so we have no idea what this chart is telling us about. The labels are not clear. Trace 1 and 0 are not intuitive. I think it intentionally wanted it to overlap to show the relationship between the two. However, I'm seeing a couple people saying in the chat the color, right? So definitely this is a poor color choice because red-green color blindness is the most common type of color blindness. So if you were given a presentation with a chart like this, and the person that you need to understand your insights the most happens to be colorblind, they wouldn't necessarily have a clear understanding of what's going on, right? Additionally, in terms of color, apart from red and color blindness, there's a strong association between the color red and danger or stop, and vice versa for green. So using these colors for two different categories can unintentionally bias the person that is receiving your presentation, right? So yes, I'm seeing some people saying you can't distinguish the lines. You definitely can't. There's no labels. It's not clear what the relationship is, right? Great feedback. So let's move on to the next one. Right. So do y'all see anything wrong here? Is this something that you would want to use in a presentation? Y'all okay with this one, this chart? Okay, so, right, thanks, Anthony. So definitely not, right? It's right, it's not a chart at all, right? It's literally just pure data, raw data. So we should never be presenting raw data to stakeholders, right? Because as you all are saying, in the chat, there's no relationships highlighted, there's no chart, it's too much text, right? So this is just confusing and overwhelming to look like to look at. So just imagine trying to present to somebody with raw data and you're just scrolling through hundreds of thousands or even millions of rows of data. There are no immediate and no obvious insights. And also people's private information would be exposed in the meeting. Great. So on to the next. What do you think about this chart? Great. Too many categories for pie chart. And similar colors. Great. So we said pie chart is not good. I actually have a lecturer who suggested us avoid pie charts at all costs, but I think that may be somewhat of a personal opinion. But yes, definitely. Again, this chart has no title. The labels are not clear. We have no idea what item 1 through 16 are referring to. The colors are really similar because you see the same, there's about 4, 5 sections that are some shade of green, at least 2 are red, several grays. And we can't even tell what's going on with the smaller categories. So because there's so many categories, it becomes confusing and it's difficult to distinguish which item is related to which slice. Right. Let's have a couple more. All right. So with the bar chart here, similar to what I was pointing out earlier, there's a lot of categories. So you start to run out of space to include your text and it becomes harder to digest. And some labels are missing. Excellent point. And I feel I've had that experience before of like working with code, generating a chart, and then if it's vertical like this, like all the titles are actually one on top of the other, so they kind of overlap and you can't read any of them. So if it really is necessary to use a bar chart and you have a lot of categories like this, it's better to do it vertically so you can see the labels horizontal. Sorry, it's better to do it horizontally so you can see the labels horizontally across the screen. And it's also easier to track which bar the label is associated with because for some of these here, we really can't tell. And my last but the error chart. What do y'all think about this one? At least this one has a title. But what's wrong here? It's too busy. Great. So including too much information will ruin the whole point of your data visualization. Because remember, the purpose of the visualization is to allow the audience to easily digest the information. And this graph does the opposite of that. So yes, as I'm seeing in the chat, it might be better to use a different visual entirely, right? Or if it's needed to separate the data so we could have multiple graphs to convey the point. All right, so I'm saying in the chat, there's no clear call out of what is being communicated. Great. So we're all on the same page. Okay, so data storytelling is all about conveying insights from data in a compelling narrative format. So the key components of finding the story, considering your audience, and structuring a narrative. Right. So we want to find the story within the data. We want to uncover insights by analyzing the correlation, trends, and patterns, and to identify that narrative thread that ties all our significant data points together. Right. So it's definitely important to consider the audience and tailor the narrative to match the audience's background, knowledge, and interests. So we have to adapt the level of technical complexity and focus on the insights that are relative to our specific audience. So Data narrative development. Developing a clear narrative is essential for effectively presenting your data story to engage and inform your audience. So here are 3 key aspects to consider when crafting your data narrative. Firstly, structuring the presentation around a central theme or storyline. So we want to begin by identifying a central theme that ties together with the insights. This theme should serve as the backbone of the presentation, providing coherence and guiding the flow of the information. So that's our framework. Right? Structure the presentation in a way that follows a logical progression similar to a story. So you want to start with an introduction that sets the stage and introduces the main characters, which would be the data, the problem, or the question that we're addressing. And then you want to build tension by presenting the data and its implications, leading to a climax where your key insights are revealed. So finally, you want to conclude with a resolution that highlights the significance of the findings and suggests potential actions or next steps. That's our narrative arc, right? And you want to engage the audience using storytelling techniques such as foreshadowing, suspense, and plot twists to captivate the audience's attention and keep them engaged throughout the presentation. So you want to create a sense of narrative momentum by gradually revealing information and building towards a compelling conclusion. Okay, so the second point to consider is identifying the key takeaways and structuring the narrative to highlight the insights. Okay, so we're going to distill key insights by identifying the most important insights or findings derived from our analysis. So these key takeaways should be central to the narrative and serve as focal points around which the rest of the presentation revolves. We want to prioritize the presentation of information based on its relevance and significance to the audience. So we also want to highlight the key findings early in the presentation to grab attention and provide some context for the subsequent discussions. So these insights should be reinforced through the narrative to ensure that they resonate with the audience and leave a lasting impression. You want to contextualize the data insights within the broader context of the problem or the issue that's being addressed. So this will help the audience understand why the findings matter and how they relate to larger trends, challenges, or opportunities in the field. So by providing context, you can enhance the audience's understanding and appreciation of the data narrative. And our third point is using storytelling techniques to engage and captivate the audience. So you want to incorporate elements of storytelling, such as anecdotes, personal experiences, or testimonials to evoke emotional responses from the audience, right? So you want to humanize the data by connecting it to real people and real world situations, so it can be more relatable and impactful. So that verbal narrative has to be supplemented with visuals such as charts, graphics, images, and videos to enhance the comprehension and retention. So visuals will reinforce the key points, illustrate trends, and bring the data to life in a way that resonates. And you want to encourage interaction and participation from the audience by asking questions, soliciting feedback, or inviting them to share their own experiences related to the data. All right, so you want to engage in dialogue and discussion as much as possible to create a dynamic and interactive presentation environment. Right. So as we mentioned just now, you want to choose visualizations that best represent your data and enhance the story. So visuals should be clear and relevant and support the key insights as opposed to making things more confusing, like some of the graphs we looked at a short while ago. So here are some best practices for presenting data. Keep it simple and keep it focused, right? Simplifying complex concepts can avoid unnecessary technical details. Use plain language and avoid jargon to ensure that your audience members can understand the information being presented. You're going to focus on key points, streamline your presentation, keep it uncluttered, and avoid overcrowding, right? Use visuals to enhance understanding. You want to also choose the appropriate visuals and use appealing graphics that can capture the audience's attention. Develop a compelling narrative, as we just discussed. and also encourage interaction and questions from the audience. It's also important to address the questions and concerns raised by the audience and clarify any points of confusion they have, providing additional context explanation as needed, and demonstrate openness in your presentation to receiving feedback and to having discussion. So, encouraging discussion can also enhance understanding and facilitate learning and allow for collaborative problem solving and brainstorming to explore potential implications and applications of the data. So we're just gonna get into talking about communicating our data insights. So there's some strategies that I'd like to share. So when communicating data to a non-technical audience, it requires careful consideration of language, context, and relatable examples. So here are 3 key strategies. Simplifying complex concepts using plain language. So again, regardless of the technical expertise of your audience, it's best to use straightforward language that's accessible to every member of the audience. So you want to avoid using industry-specific jargon or technical terms unless you're giving a technical presentation to technical stakeholders. Focus on clarity, so break down concepts into smaller and more digestible components and try to present information in a step-by-step manner. You could use analogies, metaphors, and everyday examples to illustrate abstract concepts and make them easier to understand. So it's important to also take time out to define any technical terms or acronyms that are essential to be used or to understand the data. Provide explanations and context to ensure that all the stakeholders are on the same page and can follow the discussion effectively. So secondly, providing context to help stakeholders understand the significance of the data. So again, this is the importance of telling a story and to help stakeholders understand why the data is relevant to them and how it impacts their goals, their challenges, or their decision-making processes. Highlight and communicate clearly the implications of the data insights and why they matter. So it's important to discuss potential consequences, risks, or opportunities associated with the findings, and to emphasize the importance of taking action based on the data. Relate it and connect the data insights to the overarching goals, objectives, the mission of the organization or the project. So demonstrate how the data aligns with stakeholders' priorities and how it can contribute to achieving their desired outcomes. Thirdly, using real-world data examples to illustrate key points. So making it tangible. Concrete real-world examples, case studies can help bring data to life and make it more relatable for your audience. So we can show the impact that how examples of how data-driven decisions would have made a tangible impact on outcomes, whether it was improving health, patient care, improving optimizing resource allocation, or driving organizational success. So it's important to use quantifiable metrics and to show success stories to demonstrate the value of this data-driven approach. So again, discussion is important. Inviting stakeholders to share their own experiences or perspective related to the insights. So there's active engagement and collaboration. So employing these strategies, you can effectively communicate complex insights to non-technical stakeholders, empower informed decision-making, and drive positive outcomes. So just bear in mind that the communication approach has to be tailored to the specific needs and preferences of the audience, and clarity, relevance, and engagement should be a priority. So just continuing the same vein, it is also important to, as a best practice, to use numbers and metrics. Now, when you're dealing with research papers, there would definitely be more theoretical information going into that. For example, how the modeling process was done and metrics to showcase this, right? So again, the audience is important because if you are dealing with a research or a technical audience, they want to know how the model performs. They want specifics. They want to know the F1 score, the AUV score, accuracy, etc. But if we're dealing with a more administrative audience, they may be more interested in seeing trends and visuals, example on a dashboard. And if dealing with the general public as an audience, they may want to know more general statistics and may not be too interested in details about the model. So after all the analysis we did over the last few weeks, you'd have a full notebook now. So next we're just going into looking at some of the visuals from that and how we can use it to put together a story based on what we've done. So basically, we have to ask ourselves, what were the important parts of this notebook? Just gonna like go through it quickly so we can remind ourselves of what was done. I think this would have been the very first workshop, right? Using the data from the Datathon. So we imported the library and data set. So as we're going along, you can definitely message in the chat if you see anything that you think would be relevant to a report, right? So here are imports. We imported the data set. All right, and the link for this notebook is in the workshop folder. So you can open it up on your own and scroll through as well. Right, so we did exploratory data analysis and described the data set, summary statistics, we looked at the numerical columns, the type of data that we had, an overview of the data set, checked for missing values, and accounted for missing values. So some visualization. Of the data. So a couple pie charts, distribution of patient race, patient region. The data set was then cleaned. Right, and we imputed the columns for numerical values and for categorical values. So we did some univariate analysis of patient age, distribution of region, bivariate analysis. Right, so anything so far you think would be important to put into a report of what was done? We also looked at correlation. We went too far, right? We visualize the correlation of the different features and then evaluated the models using mean square error and root mean squared error. So we have a scatter plot showing us the patient's age against the treatment period. All right, so then the models were trained, classification was done. All right. So was there anything there that you felt could be included in a short report, a non-technical report for a non-technical audience? So maybe, okay. The pie chart showing the distribution of patient race and region, great, bivariate analysis, okay, interesting. All right, so let's look at some of those visuals. All right, again, so what do you think about this? Summary statistics, should this be included in a report? It should be included in this way in a report. So maybe not, right? Because we don't want to have confusing, not with the variable names, okay, great. We don't have confusing visuals, but we can definitely summarize the statistics as shown here. The patient age range, the average age can be included in a written report. Right, so we see the summary statistics do reveal that the patient age range aligns with the overarching observation, indicating that the majority of patients fall within the 45 to 65-year-old bracket. Now, if in this slide, I actually missed out on using one of the best practices. So where I said the majority of patients, it would be best actually to give a percentage, the count. So, right. Do you think that this chart would be a good one to include as opposed to this table? Yes. So it's definitely at a glance, this is immediately clearer than the table that we just looked at, right? So we can see so we can see that the patients' ages are distributed normally, generally, more or less, right? And right, so here best practice, we're using a number. So 59% of the patients are between 45 and 65 years, right? So the data set portrays a well-balanced distribution across the age groups. All right, so what do you think about this chart? Is this something that we could include in a report? So definitely it is. And we can include some insights. So we see that our data is right skewed. So it's a longer tail on the right side distribution. And we have about 85% of the patients, they have a treatment period of 200 days or less. So having observed this based on these findings, we can see that the model's performance can maybe potentially be improved by focusing on that 0 to 100-day period, because the majority of patients fall into that category. So we can now take that data and do further analysis and try to optimize the model. So again, somebody definitely mentioned before that the pie charts would be something that we can include in a report, and I agree, right? So here's how we can add some insights to the visual. So white patients constitute the largest proportion of the population at 49.2%, followed by Black patients at 19.2%, Hispanic patients at 13.1%, patients of other races at 13%, and Asian patients at 5.6%. All right. So someone actually mentioned this chart as well. So my question is, do you think that including this chart, these box plots, in a presentation for a non-technical audience, is that like a good idea to you or not? So I can get some feedback in the chat. Right. So I agree, it could be too confusing. Somebody who doesn't know about statistics, then you have to explain how the box plot works, what each line works, and what each line represents. And you could definitely lose a non-technical audience trying to explain this to them. All right, so how do you think this table looks for a report? This was showing the correlation between the features and the treatment period. So thoughts on this? So definitely, this is a bit much for a report. Right? Someone saying it's too much information. Great. So that's precisely why. It's too much in one graphic. Too dense. Somebody has a frustrated emoji. Okay. Right. So definitely, this is way too much. Even for us who might have a better idea, there's a lot of information in one. It's difficult to read. So when you have a large table or a large chart being produced like this, from an analysis, it's best to see how we can make it concise and so that we can make it so that the audience can easily make sense of it, right? So similarly to this is also correlation matrix showing the same information. It's better to pull out insights, right? So someone saying we need more emphasis on the relevant features. Exactly. So definitely if you want to talk about this is back. Right. Definitely if you want to talk about, I see the diagnosis here, right? Or home ownership as it relates to the treatment. We can pull those insights out. You can make a smaller table that isn't this difficult to digest, that just highlights those relevant correlations. So as I said, similarly for any very large chart that you get produced, it's better to break it down. Just pull out what you need, make your own table if need be. Right. All right. So what do we think about this scatter plot? It's not very scattered. That's the first thing. Right. Definitely it is too clustered and there's no trend. So we can't gain any real insights here at all. So what might be a possible improvement if we group the patient ages to make the image more digestible and easier to interpret. So that's something that you could get into the notebook and attempt on your own time. So just a little bit on evaluation metrics for regression models and classification models. So for linear regression, the appropriate metrics to use would be mean squared error, root mean squared error, R squared. And when dealing with classification, the F1 score and the AUC score. Okay, so again, these would be important. This is from our same Google Colab. These would be important to include depending on the audience. So especially if you have a technical audience, they would definitely want to know this information, right? So we have a low R squared value for our model in our Google Colab. So definitely we know that the model isn't performing as well as you'd like it to, and further enhancements can be made to improve the results. All right. Okay, so there are a variety of tools and apps or software that we can use to create dashboards that can help us to get our insights across easier. And that includes the very popular Power BI and Tableau. Google Sheets can be used as well. And don't look down on Google Sheets and Excel. These are great places to start learning. Interestingly, I've been job hunting and the majority of job descriptions require use of Excel. So that's something to think about. Excel is a good place to start, right? So dashboards can be an effective and interactive way of getting your message and key data across. So I just wanted to show you all a real life example in Power BI using cancer data. Could you elaborate on your question about the transition? So I'm just going to pull up this dashboard for you. Right. So this is a dashboard that was built by the Pennsylvania Department of Health, and this is a cancer statistics dashboard. So as you can see, it's interactive. So you can just let me know any thoughts about it. So right now it's showing the data for both sexes, so you can separate it. Select female, number of new cases, the median age, lifetime risk, mortality, prevalence, survival, and same for male. It's taking its time to load. All right, great. So it's the data for men, and you can actually check the different types of cancer sites. So that was for all. So let's look at brain. So again, you can see the number of new male cases in 2020, mortality, prevalence, and similarly for other types of cancers. So see all sexes for non-Hodgkin lymphoma, 3,000 new cases, right? So do you all think that this is a good way to present to a general audience or non-technical audience? That they can actually interact with the data themselves? Yes, I agree too. Right, so this one is not the prettiest dashboard, but it is very clear and easy to understand, right? Okay, so I'm just gonna share again. Short video here. Okay. Great.
Yo.
So you'll hear the audio?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Oh, what's up? It's Patrick from GuyanQ. There were some recent updates to the data storytelling capabilities with PowerPoint, and I just have to do a video on it. So enough of all this talking. Yes, enough of all this talking. You know, let's do a GuyanQ. Let's do what? Let's head over to my laptop. So I found this report that I want to use in the next meeting that we're having over at GuyanQ to talk about all of our sales and the amount of freight and where we're selling stuff. So I want to use this in a PowerPoint. It's really easy to do it. If you click the share button, you'll see an option right here for PowerPoint. I'm just going to click that. It's open in PowerPoint. Right? Watch this. It's going to open up, already embedded in my PowerPoint slide. This is great. There's an instruction slide if you want to know how to get that added into PowerPoint, okay? We don't need that. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little emphasis around this. I'm going to do a little formatting of this particular element to kind of emphasize that it's from Power BI or something like that. So you can see there's a little format, a little styles option right here. So I can add an outline. And then what I can do is I can change the color of that outline. So let's get a little GuyanQ blue in there, and we'll change the width of it. It's just a nice little accent to kind of make it stand apart from the other elements on the page, right? But that's not all they did. Now I want to have a little narrative that explains everything in this visual. So what I would normally do is go insert text box, start typing. You don't have to do that. Go to the little Power BI icon, click the up arrow, and look at their data insights. I'm going to enrich this slide with insights from Power BI. So go ahead and click it. It's going to generate my insights. And then I'm going to say, just go ahead and paste it on the slide. So it takes it right there for me, and it adds that little description of this to the slide for me. Are you kidding me? I don't have to type anything. It's just a little AI maybe? I don't know. Okay, the next thing, I was looking at a report and I want an individual element from that report to kind of round out my slide. Well, you couldn't do that before, but now you can. Let me show you. I'm over here in Power BI and I have access to the workspace so I can get the entire report. But if you didn't want the entire report inside of the workspace, you can just click the little ellipsis right here and you can see where it says share link to visual. I didn't have access to the workspace. I had access to an organizational app. Can I get an individual visual from an organizational app? Let's check it out. So I'm over in my app and here's a chart that's doing annual sales comparison. I wanted to add that to my report. So if you click the ellipsis, same place, choose share, I'm going to say link to this visual. Go ahead and copy it, boom. Get that copied on my clipboard, head back to PowerPoint, go to insert. There's my Power BI add-in. I'm going to go ahead and click it, paste this in there, choose insert, and individual visual will now be embedded directly inside of my PowerPoint. And so I'm going to just grab this and move this over a little bit. I can generate some insights from it. I can format it. I can do all types of things with it. So many capabilities are coming to this data storytelling with PowerPoint. I'd love to know if you're using it. If you have any questions, comments, any feedback, you know what to do. Post it in the comments below. If you want to know more about how to get started with doing the data storytelling with PowerPoint, go check out that video that's flying over my head. And as always, from Adam and myself, thanks for watching. See you in the next video.
All right, so you're just giving a few insights of some of what you can do with Power BI. There also are lots of resources on learning Power BI, Tableau, etc. from scratch, right? All right, so let's get back to the presentation. Just 1 second. Great. So this is just another dashboard example. This is an HR dashboard that focuses on employee performance. And so it's featuring a mix of relevant KPIs to build a profile around attendance rates, individual productivity, training costs, and overtime hours accrued. So it's possible to use a mix of charts like this, graphics, graphical information, and build a narrative related to employee performance over a particular time frame. So that would create a plot line for us that would lead to increased productivity or enhanced economic efficiency, right? Okay. So here's just a very basic structure that you can follow when beginning to build reports. So your report should include the title of your study, your research questions, your summary statistics, relevant graphs or charts, statistical modeling, and any insights that you might have obtained during your analysis. Okay, so as we come to the conclusion of the presentation, let's just recap some of the main points we covered. So we discussed the importance of presenting data effectively to non-technical audiences, highlighting the crucial role that it plays in facilitating informed decision-making. We looked at key principles for creating visually engaging presentations, including the use of colors, fonts, graphics, and appropriate chart types. We looked at strategies for communicating data insights effectively to non-technical stakeholders, such as simplifying complex concepts, provided context, and using real-world examples. We also talked about the significance of developing clear narratives and presenting data stories, focusing on structuring your presentation around central themes, identifying key takeaways, and using storytelling techniques to engage the audience. We also mentioned some best practices for presenting data, emphasizing the importance of simplicity, visual enhancement, narrative development, and audience interaction. So effective data presentation is just not merely about conveying information. It's about empowering decision makers with actionable insights that can drive positive change. So in health-related contexts, where decisions have real-world implications for individuals' well-being as well as public health outcomes, the stakes are particularly high. So by presenting data in a clear, accessible, and engaging manner, we enable stakeholders at all levels to be able to understand complex issues, identify trends and patterns, and to make informed decisions that can lead to improved health outcomes and better resource allocation. So in today's data-driven world, the ability to effectively communicate our data insights is a critical skill that transcends technical expertise. It's a skill that empowers individuals and organizations to harness the power of data to address pressing health challenges, drive innovation, and ultimately make a positive impact on the lives of individuals and communities. So do you have any questions, comments? Discussion is welcome.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kirsten. So we open up the floor. Anybody has any questions, comments, anything in general that you would like to ask our speaker? She has shared some wonderful insights. You know, I always learn a lot in my own sessions with some of my team of mentors here, you know. So it's really, really nice that she was able to share that with you and her perspectives. Does anybody have any questions for her on this or even on her background? I mean, transition from optometry. I don't know, Kirsten, you want to tell them how you transition from optometry to data science to give them a little bit of insight there?
Well, okay, well, I'm not working as a data scientist. Yes, I'm still studying. But I had worked as an optometrist for several years, let's say about 6 years in the public and the private sector. But I didn't feel like it was a career that I could stay in, you know, for my entire life. So I kind of turned back to an old love for mathematics and numbers, did some research, came across data science, discovered we had a program and went for it.
Nice, nice, excellent. And that's always music to my ears because, you know, I feel like math is really central to all of this. And for those of you who have been joining us for the past few weeks and even persons who are new here, just know that, you know, data science is not only for, like, as Kirsten said, she's not working right now as a data scientist, but in any field that you're in, you can bring those data science insights. So everything that she spoke about here, you could use in whatever field that you're in to actually, you know, speak to a specific audience. And we have a lot of the links that she used in here in the folder. So y'all can let us know if you can access that. And if you have any questions, does anybody have any questions or comments? I'm seeing really great feedback in the chat. So really want to congratulate Kirsten for an amazing presentation. Very, very well done. Very informative. So we want to remind you all to fill out the feedback form. And I'm just giving you all any questions, any last round of questions. You could connect with Kirsten on LinkedIn, right, as well. And if you have any questions specific to this workshop or any of the others, feel free to email us. And I will just also remind you all, let me just go back to just share my screen to remind you before you go that we have our fireside chat, which is coming up next week. So the link for that will be on WiDSTT.org. So you could go online and actually register for that one time. And it will be like a kind of more informal session. As we said, you see how we able to talk to Kirsten about her background, etc. We'll have more of that and more insights from all of these wonderful ladies in the field about how they got into the field, what are the best practices they use as well, advice for persons who want to enter the field, that sort of thing. So at this point in time, I don't know if there's any, I'm just inviting, I mean, I'm quite sure you all don't have any questions because she covered everything so well. So if you do have any questions, as I said, feel free to reach out to us or jump into any of our links there. We have a LinkedIn page, our website, our YouTube channel. We will also post the recording there as well with all the materials also. So any last words, Kirsten, before we sign off from any last, you know, advice that you want to give to the audience before we go?
I would say this is probably a big thing for me and a lot of people that I've spoken to is really, if you want to get more into data science, to just go for it. And don't be held back by your self-limiting beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's excellent advice. And just remember, you have a lot of resources, online, and even from us, if you need that guidance as well, all of our mentors on their separate journeys, feel free to reach out and we could provide some sort of support there. So on behalf of the WIDS team, I would just like to thank everyone very much for joining us today, and not only today, for the last few workshop sessions that we have had virtually. And we will continue to put out content as we go along. So you could always feel free to reach out and, be on our pages, and you'll get those updates there. So thanks again, everyone. And have a great morning, evening, night, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And we will connect again soon. Take care.